Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'd like to thank the management for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Govinda Das. I live near Bhakti-Vedanta Manor, which is near basically North London. It's one of the few centres outside of India where Prabhupada stayed, that we still have the centre. When Prabhupada was travelling throughout the world, he obviously stayed in many ISKCON centres, and unfortunately, most of them have been sold. But Bhakti-Vedanta Manor is an exception, and we have 3 rooms that we keep very pristine. They're imbued with spiritual potency because Srila Prabhupada stayed in these rooms. So if any of you have the opportunity to come to the UK, please visit Bhakti-Vedanta Manor. Hare Krishna. So we're going to read 2 verses. I'll read this verse myself, and the next verse, which is text 17, has a purport. So the one on the board just now. Tata tadrashtra palonga bahulashva iti shutaha maitalo niraham mana ubhav apyachutau priyau. Similarly, free from false ego was the ruler of that kingdom, my dear Parikshit, a descendant of the Matilla dynasty named Bahulashva. Both these devotees were dear to Lord Achyuta. The previous devotee being mentioned is Shrutadev, who contrasts Bahulashva as the king, very wealthy. Shrutadev is very poor. But actually both of them are very wealthy internally because they have love for Krishna. In the conversations between Ramananda Roy and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramananda Roy says the greatest wealth is to have love of Radha and Krishna. So we'll chant this together. Tayo prasanna bhagavan darukena ritam ratam aruhya sakam munibhir videhan prayaya prabhu tayo prasanno bhagavan darukena ritang ratam aruhya sakam munibhir videhan prayaya prabhu tayo prasanno bhagavan darukena ritam ratam aruhya sakam munibhir videhan prayaya prabhu. Word for word. Tayoho, with both of them. Prasannaha, pleased. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Darukena, by Daruka. Aratam, brought forth. Ratham, his chariot. Aruhya, mounting. Sakam, together with. Munibihi, sages. Videhan, to the Videha kingdom. Prayayau, went. Prabhu, the Lord. Translation of purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Pleased with both of them, the Supreme Personality of Godhead mounted his chariot, which Daruka had brought, and travelled to Videha with a group of sages. Please repeat. pleased with both of them, the Supreme Personality of Godhead mounted his chariot, which Daruka had brought, and travelled to Videha with a group of sages. Purport. In his commentary on this verse, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti states that Shrutadev and Bahulashva were unable to travel to Dwarka to see Lord Krishna because both of them had vowed to regularly worship their personal deity at home. Sri Krishna was very glad to go out of his way to give them both his audience, and while leaving Dwarka, he insisted that the sages who wanted to come with him should join him on his chariot, because otherwise they would exhaust themselves following on foot. Renowned sages would ordinarily never even consider travelling in such opulent conveyance, but on the Lord's order, they put aside their natural aversion and joined him on his chariot. Tayo prasanno bhagavan darukena ritam ritam aruhyasakam munibhir videhan prayayo prabhu. Pleased with both of them, the Supreme Personality of Godhead mounted his chariot, which Daruka had brought, and travelled to Videha with a group of sages. Om Jnanatamrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistang Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanshakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So as I mentioned before, it's a great honour to be here. I seek the blessings of the senior devotees and all the devotees assembled. This particular chapter, which is chapter 86, it has two sections to it. The first section is Arjuna marries Subhadra. And now we have a section where Lord Krishna travels to Mithila and meets two of his devotees, Shrutadev and Bahulashva. So the question arises, why does he travel all the way from Dwarka to Mithila? Now I checked on Google Maps, it's 2,000 kilometers. Why would you travel so far? The answer is because Bhagavan loves his devotees. So in Mithila, Shrutadev and Bahulashva, they've actually captured Krishna in their hearts because they have pure devotion for Krishna. Now in this chapter, there's a famous phrase, Bhagavan Bhakta Bhaktiman. It's quite an easy phrase to remember. Alliteration, every word begins with pa. Bhagavan Bhakta Bhaktiman, which means Bhagavan is the devotee of his devotee. You see, one of the qualities of Krishna is Premavasya, which means he's controlled by love. And it's quite astonishing, it's beautiful to think that the infinitesimal jiva can actually capture the infinite Bhagavan with the ropes of love. Vishrijati hridayam nayasya shakshad harerava vishito kagavinash pranaya drutangi padmasa bhagavate pradana uktaha. That's for the 11th canto, didn't pronounce it nicely. But what it means is, with the ropes of love, the topmost devotees, they actually capture Krishna, even if they chant his names imperfectly. It's actually a mistake to judge a devotee if they don't chant perfectly. Now, the devotion means pay attention to detail. So it is good to learn how to pronounce mantras correctly for the pleasure of their lordships. But if out of, one is not a scholar, for example, and one may chant mantras, but with sincerity, then that captures Krishna, even though the pronunciation may be wrong. Bhavagrahi Janardana. Krishna is known as Bhavagrahi. He takes the mood. Now we have the example of the illiterate Brahmana in Sri Rangam. So others were laughing at him because he was trying to read the Bhagavad-Gita. And because he was illiterate, he was making mistakes. So when Mahaprabhu visited Sri Rangam, he asked this Brahmana, what are you doing? Why are you reading this? And he said, I cannot actually pronounce the Sanskrits properly. But my guru told me to recite the Bhagavad-Gita each day. Shuddha Shuddha Gita Podi, Guru Agyamani. He said, sometimes I pronounce Shuddha properly, other times Ashuddha. But I do it on the order of my guru. And because he was following the order of his guru, and because he had love for Krishna in his heart, he would weep whenever he picked up the Bhagavad-Gita. And Mahaprabhu would ask him, why are you crying? He said, because I see Krishna driving the chariot for Arjuna. So this is an example of Bhagavan, Bhakta, Bhaktiman. Krishna has become the chariot driver, which is the inferior position to Arjuna in this pastime. So this Brahmana, even though he could not pronounce Sanskrit properly, he actually understood the deep meaning of Vaishnava philosophy, that the Lord is controlled by his devotees. Now, Ramanujacharya has actually said that Mahaprabhu took 2 points from each of the 4 sampradayas. And from the Sri Sampradaya, he took Ananya Bhakti, pure devotional service, and Bhakti Jana Seva, service to the devotees. So it said by Lord Shiva to Parvati, Aradhananam Sarveshram, Vishnu Aradhanam Param, Tasmat Parataram Devi, Tadiyanam Samarchanam. The highest form of worship is worship of Vishnu, but higher even than the worship of Vishnu is the worship of devotees of Vishnu. Now in this verse, there's a term, Tadiya, which means things in connection with Krishna. And in this particular verse, it refers specifically to the devotees. That's how Srila Prabhupada translates it. When Mahaprabhu is teaching Sanatana Goswami, he elaborates on this word Tadiya. He gives examples. It means Tulsi. So Tulsi Seva is higher than Bhagavan Seva. Bhagavat, service to the Bhagavatam, is higher than service to Krishna. Vaishnavas, as we mentioned, and Mathura, which means the holy place. So if we serve these items, that is called Tadiya Seva, and it's actually even more potent than service to Bhagavan. I was listening recently to a YouTube video, Amarendra Prabhu. He was discussing Govardhan, and he begged the question, is Govardhan Krishna, or is Govardhan the devotee of Krishna? So he gives praman for both. If you look at Srimad Bhagavatam, Haridasya Varyo, he's the greatest devotee of Krishna. But if you look at teachings of Raghunath Das Goswami, Rupa Goswami, other scriptures, you'll find sometimes Govardhan is mentioned to be Krishna or Bhagavan, and sometimes he's mentioned to be the devotee of Bhagavan. And in the lecture he points out, you will get even more mercy if you worship Govardhan as the devotee of Krishna. Because it's Tadiya. Tadiya meaning devotional service like that. It's interesting that Shrutadev and Bahalashva, they had a dilemma. So the reason, it's mentioned in the purport, the reason they did not go to Dwarka to be with Krishna is because they had made a vow, basically. They were pujaris, they had their own deities, and they would serve the deities every day. So because they were serving Krishna in the deity form, they could not leave and go and see Krishna. Now, sometimes in devotional service, we have dilemmas, and there's not always a right answer. If we consider in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have the example of Gadadhar Pandit. So he took Kshetra sannyas. He made a vow, he took sannyas, and he vowed never to leave Nilachala. But when Mahaprabhu came to Nilachala, he was so in love that when Mahaprabhu left, he decided he would follow him. And Mahaprabhu was angry, he said, do not come. But he broke that order and he came anyway. Now internally, Mahaprabhu was actually very pleased with his love. But externally, he chastised him. He said, you have actually broken your vow. You took Kshetra sannyas and you have broken that. Now, Gadadhar Pandit, he said, just by seeing you, it counts as 1,000,000 times devotional service to the lotus feet of Gopinath. So Gadadhar Pandit, he's famous for worshipping Tota Gopinath. And it's said that this deity is sitting down. It is said that the reason this deity sat down is because Gadadhar Pandit, he aged prematurely out of separation from Lord Chaitanya when Lord Chaitanya left the planet. And so he started to stoop. He couldn't lift the garland to garland the deity. So the deity sat down just out of love to facilitate the worship of Gadadhar Pandit. So we see sometimes there's more than one right answer. It's a dilemma. We make vows, but what is the purpose of a vow? Vows are to help us in our devotional service. But ultimately, if we have the opportunity to have the direct association of Krishna, then we have a dilemma, or a direct association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What do you do in such a situation? It's interesting. Now, Shrutadev, I mentioned earlier, Shrutadev, he's very, very poor. He can barely get enough money to eat. And Bahalashva is the king. He's very opulent. So one time, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was asked, what is the difference between Ramananda Roy and Rupa Goswami? Now, the purpose behind this question is Rupa Goswami is a mendicant. He's dressed in kopans. Ramananda Roy, he's the governor of Madras. He's being carried in a palanquin. You know, when Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy met on the bank of the Godavari, Ramananda Roy is coming on a palanquin. And then this sannyasi, Lord Chaitanya, embraces him. And the brahmanas present were all astonished. Why would a sannyasi embrace a worldly person like this? They didn't understand the great devotion that Ramananda Roy had in his heart. So this question, what is the difference between Rupa Goswami and Ramananda Roy? And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati replied, Prashita Patrika, which refers to a woman whose husband is away. So when a woman's husband is present, she generally dresses very nicely, puts on nice ornaments, nice clothes to please her husband. That's her devotion. But when her husband's away, she just sleeps on the floor, doesn't comb her hair, wears very simple clothes. So there appears to be, externally, there's a very big difference between the very well-dressed woman and the very undressed, not well-dressed woman. But actually, internally, there's no difference because they're both symptoms of devotion. You see? So we may serve Krishna through interacting with this world, like Ramananda Roy. Of course, Rupa Goswami, he also interacted. He was serving the Nawab Hussain Shah. But later on, he's just sleeping under a different tree each night. So externally, there's a great difference between the lifestyle of Ramananda Roy and Rupa Goswami. But externally, it is the same. It is devotion to Krishna. So it is a mistake to think someone is somehow not advanced because they're poor, like Shrutadev. And it's also a mistake to think because someone's a king that they are not advanced. Now we have the example of King Prataparudra. So Mahaprabhu, he would not see him. But we understand that actually Mahaprabhu, this is a leela to increase the desire of King Prataparudra. He knows the heart of Prataparudra because he's the super soul. He knows the heart. But to set an example, he said, I will not meet King Prataparudra. And actually, he arranges to meet him and to have association without apparently breaking that vow. On one occasion on Rath Yatra, he falls unconscious, he's in ecstasy, and Mahaprabhu accidentally has contact with the king. And on another occasion, the king disguises himself, and then he comes and he massages Lord Chaitanya and he speaks the Gopi-Gita, and he brings Mahaprabhu to ecstasy. Of course, Mahaprabhu knows who this devotee is, but he pretends he doesn't know. And so King Prataparudra, although according to the rules of Varnashram, he should not be allowed to associate with Mahaprabhu, still that gets allowed for. That rule is broken for the higher loving exchange of Krishna with his devotees. Actually, going back to Tadiya, there's another interesting point. In one lecture, Prabhupada says Tadiya means preaching. Does anyone understand how that can be the case? How can Tadiya mean preaching? Preaching means things in connection with Krishna. But actually, if we serve the mission of Krishna, that is very pleasing to Krishna. In the Gaudiya Mat, they had a phrase, Gaura Kam, Gaura Dam, and Gaura Nam. We serve the name of Gaura. Gaura Dam, we serve the place, the holy Dam. And Gaura Kam, we serve the desire of Gaura. So if we want the mercy of Lord Gauranga, we should serve his desire. What is his desire? Desire is to spread Krishna consciousness through every town and village, like that. So yesterday I went to Barshana. It's funny how when I go to the Holy Dam, I haven't been to Vrindavan since pre-COVID. But I often find when I go to India, I actually get to develop my relationship with devotees from London. It's funny how it works. I'm in London and we all have a particular schedule. So sometimes there are devotees that we know from the same country as us, but we don't actually associate with them very much. And then we go to the Holy Dam and we discover that they are here at the same time. And then we get to do pastimes with activities with them, etc., etc. So I find it very enlivening when I come to India that I get to meet devotees, and I get to meet devotees who used to be living in England, and I get to meet devotees who are living in England, and then we don't normally have a chance to talk with each other. And it's just, you develop a relationship. And I think it's very ironic because we go to the international headquarters of the Hare Krishna movement, Vrindavan Dham, and then we kind of meet our friends who we don't normally have time to talk with. So I was on Parakram with Dayananda Swami. So he's based in the north of England. So I don't see him so often. I used to sometimes associate with him in meetings and things, but not very often. So he was taking a group of devotees from Georgia round, and some devotees from Ukraine. And we were going round Barshana. And it was very ecstatic. Sometimes, we may notice that without austerity, it's hard to actually tap into the ecstasy. So I was having a rough day because it was India. My stomach was a bit upset, so I was fasting all day. I didn't want any calls of nature while I'm on Parakram. So I went from the night before and up until about 4 in the afternoon, hadn't eaten anything. And we're climbing there's a lot of steep steps going up to Barshana. It's packed. I was thinking, how do devotees take darshan on Radhastami in Barshana? I can't imagine how it's even possible. Because when we went there, it was so packed that it was almost dangerous. You were kind of getting carried by crowd sways. It kind of is very dangerous. I mean, if you're a bit frail, you can be crushed easily. I'm okay. I'm a bit taller than the average Indian, so I survived. But I was reflecting, how can you actually take darshan at a time like that? And sometimes some of our sweetest moments in Krishna consciousness can be when it's very quiet. Even like at Krishna Balaram Mandir, I don't come at Kartik time for obvious reasons. It's very hard to book accommodation, and it's so busy it's hard to take darshan. I arrived a week ago, and it was still really busy. It was hard to take darshan. But I noticed today the crowds have died down, and I got to come closer to the deities. So sometimes the sweet moments are when it's a small group of devotees and it's not so crowded. So after the hustle and bustle of Barshana, we went down to the bottom of the hill and we found a nice temple courtyard and we were discussing the various parakram pastimes of Barshana. That was really sweet for me because I got to associate with Dayananda Swami and we went, we spent all day in Barshana. We were planning to go to Nandagram, but time caught us up, so we just decided, let us stay there, you see. So these are some of the sweetnesses that we get. I'll mention a few of the Sanskrit terms. In the previous verse, it says, niraham mana. So this is a nice word. Niraham mana means free from false ego. We know the word aham means I, and niraham means free from false ego. And another phrase is achyuta priyau. So because there's two of them, we're talking about Shuddhadev and Bahlashva, we use the dual ending, priyau. So achyuta priyau. Achyuta priyau means very dear to achyuta. So the two phrases are connected because actually you can't have love for Krishna and false ego at the same time. They're mutually exclusive. The degree to which we eradicate the false ego, to that degree we can actually develop love for Krishna. Now, one devotee I'm originally from Scotland, although I live near the manor. One devotee from Scotland, he gave a nice example. He was a Sankirtan devotee, and he said the following. Because you're out in Sankirtan, sometimes you do Sankirtan next to a jeweler's shop. So if you look at a jeweler's shop, you can see two things. Either you can see your own reflection, or you can see the jewels. Depends what you focus on. Now, if we see our own reflection, it is not so beautiful. But if we see the jewels, very beautiful. So it's like that. If we have false ego, it stops us actually experiencing the beauty of Krishna. If it's all about I and me, it stops us from seeing the beauty of Krishna. And even worse than that, false ego can lead to offenses. When one is very convinced that one is right, and one has a big false ego, one may be very critical of other devotees that maybe don't share our viewpoint. That is very dangerous. It is the mad elephant offense, you see. So, to be nirahammana, that is actually the goal, because through that, we will actually experience in Krishna. It is like Prahlad Maharaj. He says that if one dresses Krishna very nicely, then one becomes very beautiful. Prabhupada said, as devotees, we don't dress nicely. He says we just wear simple clothes, we don't put on makeup, etc. But we actually become very beautiful. Why? Because when you serve the beautiful Krishna, then our own qualities, our own beautiful qualities, they actually come out, you see. Dressing nicely, this is kind of false ego. Now, sometimes it's necessary. It's nice to dress nicely, especially if we're interacting in this world. It is a sign of respect to dress nicely. Chandrakya Pandit says, dress for others, eat for yourself. So when it comes to food, you should eat what goes down well, what won't cause you sickness. But when it comes to dressing, there's a nice way to dress. Now, some people, I remember Ayendra Prabhu, he would not dress very nicely. I love Ayendra Prabhu. When I think of Vrindavan, I think of Ayendra Prabhu. And because I'm in England, my main service in England is Harinam Sankirtan. So Ayendra Prabhu, he's a bit of a legend amongst our Harinam Sankirtan devotees. And a lot of us, around the time when Ayendra Prabhu left the planet, we noticed something. It was quite mystical. We noticed that when we were listening to Ayendra Prabhu kirtans, there was a certain potency there, more than we normally noticed. It was as if somehow he's nourishing. Ayendra Prabhu, he used to I shouldn't be talking about Ayendra Prabhu in Vrindavan because you all know him so well, but he used to talk about people say to him, why did you never leave Vrindavan? And he said, there's so much service here. He didn't want to leave Vrindavan, but his kirtan was actually going all over the world. He may not have physically been going to all these places, but through his kirtan, through the CDs, the MP3s, and then on YouTube later on, his kirtan is going throughout the world. And he broadcasts the glories of Vrindavan Dham to such an extent. And he taught us, it's interesting, one of my friends is Gopal, son of Vrida. So he used to do 24-hour kirtan with Ayendra Prabhu for many years. I'm actually living in his flat just now. He's gone away to Mayapur with his daughter. And I told him I was going to Vrindavan. And I said I wanted to visit the places. I want to visit Barshana. I want to go to Nandagram. I want to go to Radhakund. I want to go to Govardhan, go all these places. And he chastised me. And he said, what will you see with your eyes? These little material eyes, can you actually see? So Prabhupada said, the Vaishnav sees with his ears. There's a phrase, Shrutekshatapato. From bhakti-yoga, paribhavata rit saroja, ase shrutekshatapato nanunata pumsham. That the devotee, when he reads scripture or he hears scripture, then he can actually experience in Krishna, you see. So Ayendra Prabhu, he would often say, what is the benefit of going and seeing these places with our material eyes? Because we see through the chanting. So just by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we can actually experience in Krishna. Kali Kali Nama Rupi, Krishna Avatar. So he incarnates as his holy name. So I replied to him. I said, listen, I'm chanting Hare Krishna in England. We have our own bhajan group. We do bhajans maybe once a week in a Bhaktivedanta manner. And then we do Harinams. There's Harinams going on most days of the week. The main Harinam centre is Soho, which is right next to Oxford Street, which is one of the busiest streets in the world. So you can just walk out the temple and you have a wonderful opportunity to spread the holy names. And because Oxford Street is an international street, people from all over the world come to London and they all go to Oxford Street. That Harinam in London, it actually affects everyone throughout the world because people go back. They've been influenced by the holy name and they take that back to their own countries, you see. So I said to Gopal, I said, listen, I hardly ever go to India. You live in India most of your time. So I really want to visit these holy places. And I said, I can chant Hare Krishna in London. I can chant Hare Krishna on the streets of London. And so that was my excuse. But actually, I did spend a lot of time on the 24-hour kirtan when I arrived because I had jet lag. So I had the very sweet opportunity just to sit with a couple of devotees all night chanting Hare Krishna. And it's just very, very inspiring for me. So for me, Vrindavan, I used to live in Mayapur. That was for 2 years. That was 20 years ago. I was teaching at one of the Gurukuls. And I love Mayapur Dham. And for me, I think it's very appropriate because Krishna does not take your offences so seriously if you're residing in Mayapur. Whereas in Vrindavan, your offences are magnified. So I consider myself to be not so pure that I can live in Vrindavan, but I just find it very inspiring to come to Vrindavan. And for 3 weeks, I can lift my game and behave myself, be very focused, try and be very focused on Krishna consciousness, and then take that away with me, because then I have those memories which kind of nourish. Prabhupada said, actually Gopal said to me just before he was leaving, he gave me a quote. He said, Prabhupada said, the devotees in the West, they should spend 6 months a year in Vrindavan. I think, how's that possible? How would we even preach if we spent 6 months a year? But it's a wonderful idea, because if you recharge your batteries, become very spiritually potent, then you can actually influence others. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkarna rasayana kata tasyoshana shashva bhavargavartmani shradaratir bhaktir anukramishyate. if we hear from the advanced devotees, then actually our hearts will melt and we will develop rati or shraddha, faith, rati, which I've been told the acharyas say means preliminary love of God, and bhakti, which means prema bhakti. It comes through hearing. We may read the book, we may not understand it, but when we hear from the self-realized soul, then there's extra potency there. So Prabhupada gives the example. He said, when the young man is potent, then when there is contact with woman, the woman gets pregnant. In the same way, when you hear Srimad Bhagavatam from someone who has spiritual potency, then it affects you. It spiritually affects you. And there are so many examples of Srila Prabhupada having that effect. There were hippies who did not understand the purpose of life, didn't know where they were going, and just from a few moments association with Srila Prabhupada, their life was transformed. It was a spiritual experience. And there are many instances of devotees who explain that when Srila Prabhupada looked at them, he was seeing through them. He could see their previous lives. He could see their good. The things that we want to keep hidden, he could see all that. But then there was an overwhelming feeling of compassion. That's the experience that so many Prabhupada disciples had when Prabhupada looked at them. So this is the power of the pure devotee. So I feel very privileged that I've had the opportunity to come here and associate with all of you. This is a very kirtan-oriented temple. We have parakram. The Guru Puja is very elaborate. We have this parakram, and there's kirtan going on all the time. And my one request, you see, I've noticed something, because I sometimes organized Harinam. Although Harinam is one of the main activities of the Krishna consciousness movement, it is sometimes difficult to organize a Harinam, especially in the West, because everyone's working. Most people who come to the Holy Dham, they have free time, they can chant Hare Krishna. But when you're in the West and you're working, it's difficult for people to make time for Harinam. And it can be difficult for Harinam Sankirtan devotees to get the motivation to try and keep going because they don't get support. So my request is, see, I love the 24-hour kirtan, but I notice at night there's very few people there. Sometimes it's just 2 devotees. And it's very enlivening when an extra devotee comes, an extra couple of devotees come. So if you're ever awake at night, just have a shower, come here and just take part in the kirtan. Because the 24-hour kirtan, they really need all the support that we can get. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your patience, and I'll open it up for any comments or questions or any corrections. Panchagoda Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Sankirtan devotee.
My tradition, I got to ask a question. Yes, Sankirtan, we did a lot of book distribution in Miami and some traveling. And we were on Harinam in Coconut Grove. And one African devotee liked the kirtan so much, he jumped in the van and joined the temple on the spot. The power of Harinam.
It's fantastic.
You were speaking about, you saw, here at the Holy Dham, people from England, so you can identify with them. Prabhupada sometimes mentioned that, like in a foreign country, like if an Indian meets another Indian, oh, how are you? Where are you from? And, there's some excitement. But at the same time, we're also trying to be in a spiritual, transcendental platform. So how do we see the spirit soul and not that, oh, he's British or he's Bengali or he's, Oriental or, I think Lord Chaitanya made a comment one time when one nice Bengali devotee stole the foot wash of Lord Chaitanya and drank it. He goes, oh, you're Bengali person's acting. So, so sometimes there's mockery. And I know when Prabhupada was lecturing here in 1972, the Nectar of Devotion series, he always mentioned that, there's so many foreigners coming, but they should be welcome, because sometimes people are still on the bodily platform, especially if they're priests or people who want to follow a certain tradition. And, what I'm saying? Those are just some things, if you want to say something.
Thank you. My first thought, I'm reminded of something that Srila Prabhupada said. He said, when there's a fire, father may run into the house, the first person he saves is his son. Maybe other children there, but he'll save his son first. And he said, that's natural. So there's a kind of a natural affinity to people that you know. So I come here and I see people that I already know. Because I already know them, I have a natural affinity. And it's not that I'm thinking, I only like English people, right? So that sense is there. And how to see on the bodily platform? To see off the bodily platform. See, I actually love Indian food. I don't mind chili, even though they say at the time of Mahaprabhu, they weren't eating chilies, right? It's been introduced later, I've been told. But anyway, I don't have it. I like associating with Indian, people of Indian heritage. I just find them nice.
Be careful, you might get an invitation.
And actually, Bhaktivedanta Manor, we have debates going on there because we have this thing about we're supposed to be spreading Krishna consciousness to all the Westerners, and the temples, the footfall is going up and up every year, and it's nearly all people from Indian heritage. So of course, we have this discussion. So it's very sensitive, this thing about bodily platform, because on the one hand, we want to kind of spread Krishna consciousness to everyone, and at the same time, we don't want to discriminate on bodily platform. But obviously, if you're going to spread Krishna consciousness to everyone, you start to analyze the demographics of what's going on there, you see. So we just do it in a nice way. We're all, as devotees, we're all friends with each other, but we sometimes, I'm kind of answering your question, maybe going a little bit off the topic, but we have a centre called Studio 108, that's in London. And here's an interesting phenomenon. We have a temple, of course, at Soho, and devotees found it very difficult to get people to join. So they opened up this Studio 108, and there's no Indians going to come because there's no temple. When you have a temple and lots of Indians, they come, or people from Indian heritage. And what they noticed is they do preaching there. There's no devotees, no nothing, and they teach people Hare Krishna, and they become devotees. And then they introduce them to the temple. But what they discovered was, if you introduce them to the temple straight away, they don't seem to become devotees. So they cultivate them in a little, it's like they ring fence that they create this little environment where they actually build up connection with them. And later on, these devotees join the ashram. So it's kind of funny how it all works. Yeah, does that kind of answer?
It's pretty good. That was pretty good, yeah.
I've got a question for you.
What's that?
Thank you. See, I'm just wondering, how do you have such enthusiasm for playing the mridanga? Now, I'm 55
wow.
years
old. I know. That was a tough one today. He was really going high speed, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you need to, if we're using our exercise for Krishna, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I like music, so.
And I've got another question for you, if I may. I was mentioning to Dia how the devotees are so dear to Krishna. So I'm fortunate, I don't manage. But I'm thinking I notice in management it's very difficult because, as you mentioned, some people will give you a round of applause and some will want to throw rotten tomatoes at you. How do you deal with the danger of displeasing devotees when you know that devotees are dear to Krishna and you have to make decisions which can hurt people?
Don't keep rotten tomatoes around. No, it is difficult. If you do something, people don't like it. If you don't do it, they don't like it. If you go to the left, they don't like it. If you go to the right, they don't like it. But the idea is that, personally, I feel the more we can hear the Bhagavatam, the more we can participate in the kirtan, because Krishna is always happy. And he says devotees should not be morose and just, they should be happy that Prabhupada's given us a chance to serve and be in the association of other devotees. So this is really important. So when challenges come, we just try to deal with it as best we can. But if one's Krishna conscious, then difficult things become easy. And sometimes we're not so Krishna conscious, it becomes very easy, things become very difficult, like even on Sankirtan like that too. So we're fortunate, we have a lot of enthusiastic devotees, a lot of activities going on. And the four frailties, mistakes, imperfect senses, cheating propensity and illusioned, the four, and management, sometimes those come into play too. But we follow Guru Parampara. Prabhupada set the standard, and like by reading Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's very protective of the devotees as well. He said a little discrepancy in the philosophical outlook, one could be easily swayed, you know. So sometimes when you're visiting too many holy places and hearing some beautiful pastime, that's nice. But Prabhupada did say that all the holy places are within the boundaries of Krishna Balaram Mandir, and meaning that the deities are same as all the other. Krishna's here, Krishna Balaram is here, Radhashama, Sandita Vishaka. No disrespect to other places, but I'm saying that to be focused on Prabhupada's teachings and the preaching mission is most important, not to, you know, taste around too many places and read too many books.
Thank you.
That was my summary of management.
Sorry. It seems like a strange thing you were mentioning, that some people, whatever you do, they're against it. There was in the 60s, there was a magazine called Mad Magazine, and Alfred E. Newman says, whatever it is, I'm against it. But it doesn't seem like that's the devotional attitude that we should have. You may appreciate doing a particular service, then put that forward. But I'm glad my mother taught me too. We don't turn against our friends. And of course, the devotees are our friends, but we find somehow people who said you should have sat over there, and then you sit there, why aren't you sitting here, right? Some people are like that, but we should look for the positive things instead of always looking for, you know, we encourage people.
Bambi said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Yes.
Can you repeat that?
If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Who said it?
Bambi.
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 A little cute little deer, yeah? Bambi.
You.
Child, you know, the deer.
Yes. That's been a long time.
So Prabhupada said we should be like the bee, taking the honey. We should be like the fly who goes to the stool.
You encourage people, they sometimes try to come up to that instead of saying, oh, you can't do anything right. Then, of course, the person flounders because they think they can't do anything right. It's the wrong thing to say.
Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, he had the interesting way of dealing with quarrels in the Gaudiya Math. He would bring the two people together and he'd say to one of them, start glorifying this person. And he'd have to start doing it. You glorify him, and after a while, everything's nice again. There's a lot to say, a lot to be said for just being nice. Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Maharaji. Maharaji, such wonderful words. The thing which appealed me, Maharaji, in the beginning itself, you told that Krishna, the infinite, can be captured through love.
Yes, yes.
So the question here is love itself. So how to, because as far what I'm seeing very apparently, through years I am seeing this thing, that senses do understand the language of effort. If you ask me to stand up, I may stand up. If you ask me to raise my hand, I may raise my hand. But deep within that also, I know I can't do that without the mercy of Krishna. But still, let's take it that senses do understand. But yeah, that's what the question is, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, the question is, if you ask me to go there to that Krishna on the wall who's there with Yashoda and start loving him, okay, so my legs can go there.
Yes.
But what will I do to love? Should I tear my clothes? Should I pull my hair? What can I do? Can emotions, any emotion whatsoever, any love or hatred or pity or compassion or mercy, can it be created? Is there anyone?
Okay.
Yes. So that's what my question is.
Okay. So there's a phrase in 11th canto, Bhaktya Sanjataya Bhaktya. Bhakti comes from Bhakti. It comes from no other place. So if we even perform sadhana, as you mentioned, we have control over our senses. we can walk here, do this, say this, and we can engage all our senses in sadhana. That is no guarantee that we will get love within our heart, because bhakti sanjataya bhakti. Bhakti comes from bhakti. It's grace that descends. So yes, it is grace. Through grace we get our devotion. But who is the grace giver? Krishna. And what's Krishna's advice? Is to follow this process. So by following the process given by Krishna and given by the acharyas, then the grace is more likely to come to us if we follow what they say. But yes, I agree. Our senses, we can do so many things that appear to be bhakti, but is it really bhakti? As that love actually come? So yes, it is coming. It's like in the Christianity, they say, it is not from works alone, it is from grace. So there are, or is it Markata Kishore Nyaya versus Marjana Kishore Nyaya? The Sri Sampradaya, they have two schools of thought. Is mercy like the monkey, baby monkey holding on to the monkey, or like the baby kitten? So the baby kitten does nothing. The mother just holds the kitten. Baby monkey has to hold on. So then the question arises, well, how do we get Krishna's mercy? Are we like the monkey? We have to make the effort? Or are we like the kitten? Do we just surrender? You see? And then, so there's different ways to look at it. Kitten is better. Kitten is better. But you mentioned the infinitesimal. There's one actually thing I'll tell you. I wanted to say this earlier, I forgot to say it. It's also in the 11th canto. Anu vrajam yaham nityam. You don't know this verse? Anu vrajam yaham nityam angri renu bihi. I forgot, there's one word I'm missing. You know that? Puya ye. Thank you. Yeah. This verse is saying that Krishna, he follows behind his devotees. Why? Because he wants the dust from his devotees. Because he becomes purified. Now this is an interesting question, but Krishna's already pure. So what does he mean by that? But actually, Krishna's thinking, one of the qualities of Krishna is Koti Brahmanda Vigraha, innumerable universes are within his body. So Krishna's thinking, I want to purify all these universes with the dust from the lotus feet of my devotees. So he follows behind his devotees, and then that foot dust then purifies all the universes. Now the purport is very amazing because there's two other answers given to what's going on here. Another one is this. Krishna thinks to himself, I have made a strict rule that no one can attain pure devotional service without receiving the dust of my pure devotee. I myself want to experience the bliss. He comes as Lord Chaitanya to experience that bliss. So Krishna wants to experience the bliss of devotional service. So he thinks to himself, I must also follow this rule. I must take the dust of my devotees. And Madhvacharya gives another explanation to this verse. Actually, as Krishna's walking, he's kicking up dust from his feet, and the wind's blowing that foot dust onto his devotees. So he's actually blessing the devotees with his foot dust. And the purport ends with a statement, you cannot understand this with material logic. It's all about love, this whole concept. Hare Krishna. One more, thank you. Take one last question, then I think it's 9 o'clock we stop, yeah?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thanks for a very enlightening talk. One of the things which you highlighted was that with false ego, the realization of Krishna becomes difficult. So how can we overcome this false ego? Can you give some practical suggestions?
How can we overcome false ego?
Yes.
Okay. For me, the main thing to do is offer ourselves as servant of all the devotees. A quick way to get rid of false ego is to offer service to those devotees that one maybe doesn't have any connection with, devotees that one maybe not like, have some kind of negative feeling about. If you offer service to that devotee, that will very quickly eradicate the false ego. And we should think, everything we do, we should just think, this is Krishna's mercy. I was kind of nervous to give class. This is Vrindavan, it's a big center. And one of my friends said, don't worry about it. Just let Krishna kind of say what he wants to say. Just let it come. If we see ourselves as we're not the doer, then where's the question of false ego? If we understand that everything that we say, all our intelligence, whatever we have is coming from Krishna, it's not us, then where's the question of false ego? But I'm sure there's many things to say on this topic. You could talk for hours on how to eradicate false ego. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanandi.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.